I remember the moment like it was a slow-burning fuse, the kind that doesn't announce itself loudly but hums under your skin until you can't ignore it anymore. She was standing there in the kitchen, the low light casting soft shadows across her face. Graceful, confident, but with a trace of something quieter, like a secret she wasn't quite ready to admit, even to herself. Her hand brushed mine as I reached for the coffee mug, a touch so light I might have imagined it, except my skin prickled where her fingers lingered for a fraction longer than necessary. I don't usually get caught up in the small things. But that night, everything about her, the way she moved, the warmth radiating just beneath her calm exterior, pulled at something inside me I didn't know existed. She wasn't just my friend's mom. She was a woman who carried herself like she knew exactly what she wanted but was careful not to show it too openly. And I was the kid who wasn't supposed to see past the surface. Her eyes caught mine across the dim kitchen, the kind of look that isn't really about what's said but what's held back. A breath, a hesitation, a flicker of softness, and something almost vulnerable. I watched the way her lips parted slightly, just for a second, as if waiting for something she wasn't sure she could say. The silence between us was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was charged, like the quiet before a storm breaks. I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how close she was, how the scent of her perfume mixed with the faint hint of vanilla from the candles flickering nearby. The warmth of her body, the subtle rise and fall of her breath, made my pulse thud unevenly. I tried to look casual, but my hands trembled just a little when I finally spoke. "Is everything okay?" I asked, voice low, almost too soft. She smiled then, something brief and bittersweet, like she was holding a memory that didn't want to let go. "You're always so observant," she said, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Maybe too much for your own good." I laughed, but it was short, because I knew there was more behind her words. Something she was keeping locked away, maybe because it wasn't supposed to be mine to find. Her fingers brushed mine again, this time intentionally, and I didn't pull away. Instead, I let myself sink into the moment, the way her skin felt against mine, the quiet heat that settled between us like an unspoken promise. "You can't find out," she said suddenly, voice barely above a whisper. I blinked. "Find out what?" She looked away, biting her lip just slightly, like she was trying to hold back a confession. "Just don't ask." It was enough to set my mind racing. What was I not supposed to know? And why did the thought of it make the space between us feel even smaller, more fragile? I wanted to reach out, to trace the curve of her jaw, to tell her that some secrets didn't need words. Instead, I said, "Then bite your lip harder." Her eyes flicked back to mine, wide and sharp now, the tension sparking between us like electricity. The silence stretched again, longer this time, as if the air itself was holding its breath. And then, just as the moment felt like it might break or settle into something new, the kitchen door creaked open. The door swung open, and my heart jolted. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, just for a second. Then she closed it quietly, the soft click louder than it should have been. The moment broke, but the charge between us only thickened. I couldn't stop watching her, the way her posture shifted, as if trying to steady herself. I knew a little about her story. Years ago, a marriage that didn't quite survive its own promises, leaving a quiet loneliness she rarely let show. She never talked about it, but sometimes, late at night, I caught her staring out the window, like she was searching for something she'd lost, or maybe never found. Me? I'm still figuring things out. The awkwardness of being the younger one, the kid, who looks up to her in ways I try to shove down. It's complicated, the way the world would see us. Her, the graceful woman who's seen more life than I have. Me, fumbling through my 20s, trying not to step on the lines that divide us. Tonight, that line felt thinner than ever. She moved closer under the dim kitchen light, just close enough that her breath brushed my cheek when she spoke. "You don't have to pretend with me," she said softly, voice a whisper that made my skin tighten. I swallowed, trying to keep my gaze steady but failing. Her hand reached out, fingers trailing along my shoulder, slow and deliberate. The contact wasn't just touch, it was a question, an invitation wrapped in hesitation. I wanted to ask what she meant, why she was so careful with her words. But I stayed quiet, letting the space between us fill with unsaid things. The warmth from her skin seeped through my shirt, grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. There was a moment, long enough for my breath to hitch, where her fingers lingered, as if deciding whether to pull away or hold on. Then she pulled back just a fraction, eyes flickering with something I couldn't name. I wanted to reach out again, to bridge the gap that both of us seemed too scared to cross. Instead, I just breathed her in, the faint scent of jasmine mixed with something deeper, more intimate. "You ever feel like you're watching life through a window?" I said quietly, breaking the silence. "Like you're close, but not really part of it?" She smiled then, a slow, knowing curve of her lips. "More times than I care to admit." The words settled between us, heavy and real. Neither of us moved for a beat, caught in that fragile balance of wanting and holding back. Then, without thinking, her hand brushed mine once more, lighter this time, but with a promise I could feel pulsing underneath. The kind of promise that says maybe, just maybe, some rules were made to be bent. And for a moment, standing there in the quiet kitchen, the world outside faded. All that mattered was the way our fingers touched, the silent conversation we shared in the space between words. The kitchen was quiet again, but the air between us felt charged, like we were standing on the edge of something neither of us dared name. Her fingers still brushed mine, the warmth spreading under my skin like a spark that refused to die out. Then, the sudden buzz of a phone shattered the moment. I glanced down, my phone, screen lighting up with a message from my friend. The one whose mom was standing just inches away from me. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed to keep this secret buried. "He can't find out," she'd said. But the message, so casual and unaware, was a sharp reminder of the line we were towing. She caught my glance and stiffened just a little, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite read. I swallowed hard, the silence stretching as I slid the phone face down. Her breath hitched when I looked back at her, closer now than before. I could see the faintest tremble in her lips, a hesitation I recognized all too well. We were suspended in that fragile space, too close to step back, too afraid to move forward. "Maybe we shouldn't," she started, voice trailing off. But the words hung between us, unfinished. Instead, our eyes locked, unblinking, searching. Her hand found my cheek, fingers trembling slightly as she brushed a stray strand of hair behind my ear. I felt the heat of her palm against my skin, steadying and soft all at once. My breath caught. I leaned in, heart hammering loud enough I was sure she could hear it. Our faces inches apart, the warmth of her breath mingling with mine, the moment stretched thin, impossibly taut. And then, before anything could happen, the kitchen door creaked open. We froze. Not her, but my friend. He stepped inside, oblivious, talking about something mundane. I stepped back, heart still racing, and she quickly pulled her hand away, smoothing her hair like nothing had happened. The spell was broken, but the tension didn't fade. If anything, it grew heavier, the almost kiss lingering in the air like smoke. Later, as I sat in the quiet living room, the weight of guilt pressed down. Was this right? Was I crossing a line I couldn't uncross? The fear of what others would think, the whispered judgments, the ruined friendships, pulled tight around my chest. But beneath it all was a stubborn ache, a longing that refused to let go. When she finally came to sit beside me, our knees brushed. Her eyes flickered away, then back again, softer now, vulnerable. I reached out slowly, fingers grazing hers, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she let herself lean closer. Closer than we'd ever been. And in that fragile closeness, where hesitation and desire tangled, I realized we were both holding on to something fragile and dangerous. The quiet between us had stretched too long, and the weight of what we weren't saying pressed down harder with each passing second. I could feel her breathing, shallow, hesitant, but steady enough to tell me she was holding back. I reached out, my fingers trembling just a little as I brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. The warmth of her skin beneath my touch made my heart tighten, a slow burn spreading through my chest. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, her body soft against mine, the faint scent of jasmine wrapping around me like a whispered secret. Her eyes searched mine, vulnerable and bold all at once. "You don't have to hide it," I whispered, my voice low, almost trembling near her ear. "Whatever this is." Her hand found mine, fingers tightening briefly, and then she took a breath, long and shaky. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice barely above the sound of her own breath. "Of what it means, of what people will think." I nodded, knowing exactly what she meant. The age, the tangled web of friendships, the quiet judgment waiting just beyond the edges of this room. But beneath the fear, I could see it, something raw and desperate, a desire she tried to bury. "I've never felt like this," she confessed, her lips barely moving, but the words hit me like a sudden storm. Neither of us moved, caught in the fragile space between longing and restraint. My hand slid from her cheek to cradle the back of her neck, fingers threading into the soft curls there. Her breath hitched again, a subtle tremor running through her. I leaned closer, my lips hovering just inches from hers. The warmth of her skin was intoxicating, the faintest brush of her breath on my mouth setting my nerves alight. And then she whispered something I almost didn't hear. "If someone walked in, if anyone found out." Her words hung unfinished, heavy with the weight of impossible choices. I wanted to tell her it didn't matter, that right now it was just us, and nothing else existed. But before I could speak, the distant sound of a door opening shattered the moment. We broke apart, eyes wide, hearts racing. The world snapped back, louder, harsher, and full of things neither of us was ready to face. But even as the shadows crept in, and reality pressed close, the question lingered between us: would we let this go? Or would we cross the line? The moment everything changed, just as the tension between us seemed unbearable, the quiet was shattered, not by footsteps, but by a voice I wasn't ready to hear. I didn't mean to overhear. It was her son, my friend, standing in the doorway, eyes wide and uncertain. But I heard everything. The air around us thickened instantly. Her hand jerked away from mine, trembling as she stepped back, breath catching like she'd been punched in the gut. I froze, heart hammering, caught between shock and something darker, fear, maybe even shame. He shifted awkwardly, avoiding my gaze but clearly struggling to find the right words. I don't know what to say." Her eyes met his for a moment, sharp, vulnerable, pleading, and then she turned away, brushing past me so close I felt the heat of her skin even as she tried to put space between us. My own hands shook, fingers curling into fists at my sides. I wanted to reach out, to steady her, but the weight of what had just been revealed held me back. Everything that felt safe moments ago now felt like a high wire stretched too thin over an impossible drop. I looked back at my friend, her son, the boy I'd grown up with, the one who had unknowingly become the invisible line we weren't supposed to cross. His face was a mixture of confusion and something else I couldn't quite place. Hurt? Betrayal? Or maybe just the raw surprise of an unexpected truth. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, charged with a strange electricity, like the moment before a storm breaks. I glanced at her again. Her shoulders were tense, eyes glistening but defiant. Despite everything, the unspoken connection between us pulsed stronger than ever. I stepped closer, cautious but driven by something I couldn't deny. Our eyes locked, and I saw the flicker of the same conflicted desire mirrored in hers. For a heartbeat, the world outside stopped. Then she whispered, voice barely steady but fierce. "We can't pretend anymore." The words hung in the air, fragile, dangerous, impossible to ignore. I reached out, fingers brushing her arm, the simple touch igniting a fire that fear couldn't quench. "We don't have to," I said softly. And in that charged silence, the choice was no longer about hiding or denying, it was about what we were willing to risk. Would we turn away, or step forward into the unknown? Her breath caught again, and I could feel her decision trembling just beneath the surface. The night was far from over. And whatever came next, nothing would be the same. The room was charged, electric, fragile, like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for what was coming next. We stood just inches apart, the faintest space between us trembling with everything left unsaid. Her eyes caught mine, searching, barely blinking, like she was trying to read the part of me I'd been hiding, the part that wanted to give in, even knowing how risky it all was. I reached out slowly, fingertips brushing the curve of her jaw, tracing the delicate line where skin met shadow. Her breath itched, a quiet sound caught deep in her throat, and I felt it, raw and honest, like a confession without words. "This doesn't have to be perfect," I whispered, voice rough with want and something softer beneath it, fear maybe, or hope. "It just has to be real." Her lips parted slightly, and for a moment I thought she'd say yes, say the thing that would shatter the walls between us forever. But then her hand came up, fingers trembling as they found mine. She squeezed, tight, grounding, and I saw the storm behind her eyes, the years of regret, the guilt, the fear of what came after. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice breaking but steady. "Of losing everything, and losing myself." I nodded because I felt it too, the weight of what we might be risking. But beneath that fear was something stronger, something that said maybe this was the chance to be seen, truly seen, in a way either of us had dared before. I stepped closer, so close our breaths mingled, warm and unsteady. "Whatever happens," I said, "I want you to know I see you. Not the story, not the friend's mom, just you." Her eyes softened, a flicker of something like relief washing over her. Then she leaned in, just barely, so close I could feel the faint tremble of her breath on my skin. For a heartbeat, the world held still. We didn't need more words. The space between us was filled with everything: longing, fear, hope, and the messy, beautiful complexity of two flawed people trying to find something real. And in that fragile, trembling moment, we both understood. Whatever came next, we weren't alone anymore. The line had been crossed. But this time, it was because we chose to step forward, not away. The question now was no longer if, but how. And as our fingers intertwined, the future felt uncertain but alive, raw and messy and real. The night had stretched on, the weight of everything we'd held back finally giving way to something quieter, something softer. We sat side by side on the worn couch, fingers still entwined like a promise either of us wanted to break. Her head found my shoulder, warm and steady, and for the first time, the distance between us, the years, the unspoken judgments, the fears, felt less like a wall and more like a bridge. I could feel the steady beat of her heart beneath the thin fabric of her shirt, slow and certain, matching my own in a way that felt real. "I was so sure this was wrong," she murmured, voice low and honest. "But now it feels like it's just us. Nothing else." I smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "We're the ones who make it real, not the rules or the doubts." There was a softness in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a quiet acceptance, maybe even a little hope. We didn't have all the answers. The future was still uncertain, tangled with complications and whispered judgments. But sitting there, wrapped in the simplicity of a shared moment, none of that seemed quite so heavy. She shifted, turning to look at me fully, her fingers brushing a loose strand of hair behind my ear, a small gesture, but one that carried everything we hadn't said. "No more pretending," she whispered. "No more hiding." I agreed. The warmth between us wasn't just physical. It was the kind of connection that comes from being truly seen, from the messy, flawed, beautiful reality of two people willing to take a chance. And in that quiet room, with the city lights blinking softly outside, we just stayed there, close, tangled, real. Maybe the world would always have its opinions. Maybe the age gap, the risks, the past would try to pull at us. But for now, none of that mattered. We had this moment. And we had each other.